Welcome to Busy Living So Ba. Busy Living So Ba. Busy Living Soba. If you're here for the first time, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And if you're back as a regular, it's so good to see you as well. Even though I'm not seeing you, hopefully you're listening to me. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to my channel and share with your friends. And today is episode 451.
Oh,
Our guest, Amberlie Johnson, who has written a book called Addiction from the Other Side. Hi, Amberlie. Welcome.
hi there, dear. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you reached out to share about your important, message to everybody that's out there. And I love having people that are actually the other side, and that's her book,
Mhm.
Addiction from the Other Side. And so tell us what happened and what it was like.
I think a lot of things that we go through in life we never assume will happen to us. So I think that the shock was the biggest thing. And I was in my late 20s when this happened with my husband. And we had been together almost 10 years at that time. And some people are wondering why I was so blind to seeing what was going on and those kind of issues, especially with like opiate addiction or any addiction, is that you're not always seeing that side because you don't want to. So you live in this like, I love you, I trust you, and thing. And then you get something like happened with us where he was not breathing. And I am trying to resuscitate him on the ground because he has completely lost all color. And I couldn't figure out why he was having heart failure at the time until we got to the hospital. And then after running all the labs and everything, then they had brought that up. And then it was time to have a truth talk. And we had that talk. And with the book, is mainly why I set out there to set my story, because I want to try to see if we can help people before it gets to that point. Like before it gets so bad that you're facing death, basically. And not everybody will be as, I guess, you never know how you're going to be in an instant like that, but calm and collective, or even being there to be able to help save them.
So tell me this. So you met him, obviously, if you were in your 20s, you met him when you were in high school?
Yes, right out of high school. And we've been together ever since.
Okay, so you met him right out of high school. And when you met him and you were dating, was he doing anything that made you suspicious of his behaviors or anything? Was he a drinker? What was his story before, like in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was more of obviously partying, constantly being around friends, hanging out at people's friends' houses, doing all that kind of stuff. And we had actually bought our first house when I was 20. So it was basically like having people always over, and we were always doing the party scene. So for me, it was never anything to look right into the zone like this is what's going on, because we were always hanging out with people and partying all the time. So it was never anything that like shed light on me like that.
And did you party as well?
I definitely can say I did, but I don't just mainly alcohol. Maybe a little weed smoking here and there. I mean, we're all going to be honest here, and I'm honest in my book. So, I mean, we were all at that point at some point. I didn't engage with it on a regular basis or anything like that, but, at least, we'd be drinking on the weekends and whatnot. And that, at least for me, was what I was doing. So,
And for him, did he just start doing opiates, or what happened to actually lead him to using?
and not always is this the same circumstances. I mean, everything is a different situation, but with his, he started to have like back pain. And a friend of his was like, "Oh, if you go see this doctor, he'll prescribe you meds." And this was a doctor that was actually in Michigan who was in the paper, eventually got arrested, went to jail for it because he was writing enormous amounts of opiates on a script. So people were getting like Percocet and Oxy, like 360 tablets for a 30-day period.
Oh my God.
And it was even for people that obviously, I mean, he really didn't have, I mean, he had back pain because he's a very tall guy. So I know that it's with his job, he was having some back pain, but nothing as near as to put to the point where he could take up to 6 a day. And when that happened, I was just not oblivious. I was like, I know he was taking meds, but I didn't actually like keep an eye on the bottle or anything because I'm like, well, he's an adult, he'll figure it out. And it kind of started there for him. And then when he couldn't find anymore, and then that doctor got arrested, then it was him doctor shopping. So then he was going to see different doctors and getting scripts. And then when that didn't work anymore, I found out then later he was buying it off the street. And when you buy it off the street, you really don't know what is in that medication, what it's laced with. That is the biggest thing for people to understand, that you don't know what you're getting when you're buying it straight off the streets. You don't know what's all in it. It may look like what it is, but it's not exactly what it is.
You know what's so interesting? In a treatment center at one point in my past when I was getting certified as a recovery coach. And I remember being in treatment and being at the nurse's station and people coming, detoxing off of these medications. And the people being really adamant with this nurse or the doctor and saying, what is this that you're giving me? This looks
Mhm.
like, what is it? And being very like, I'm not taking this. What are you giving me? And
Mhm.
I would always think to myself, you just scored stuff off the street from someone that you might not even have dinner with. Wouldn't invite to your home. You have no
Exactly.
idea what it is, and you go and you ingest it. And
Mhm.
how soon after, like, so when he was doing, how many years was this that he was going and doing this?
It was at least for a good 5 years. And that's where his body just eventually just gave out. That's what will happen. Your body will eventually just give out because you're putting so much toxicity in there. And certain things like fentanyl, if anything is laced with fentanyl, it causes your heart to have specific arrhythmias that will put you in complete heart failure. It may not be the first time you try it, it may not be the last time you try it. It all just depends. But that is where it gets scary, because if you don't know what you're ingesting, you don't know what your outcome will be. It may not be the high that you're looking for. It may be your last high.
And are you a nurse?
I'm a certified medical assistant right now. I am working on my RN and hopefully be done this year. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's nice to be in the healthcare field because I'm keep getting up to date on everything that's going on the outside with patients or within the trends and different things that are happening now, especially with opiate use in teenagers and what's out there now.
It's kind of scary.
It's very scary. Back in the day, I would say that when we were doing things, it was all about who can get the beer for the weekend. Now it's like pill parties, and they're sending emojis now, which is totally blew my mind, that's something new now to try to step up the game, to try to make it look like you're not doing that. But certain emojis, if you send them to people, mean certain things, like whether you have meth, whether you have oxy, whether you have this or that. So that is something new that's been put out there, that they're trying now, drug dealers, so that it's flying under the radar, basically.
So what's an example of an emoji that someone would send for meth?
Like a couple of them I had listed. One was like a snowman, so that had to do with cocaine, which I mean kind of makes sense. But like a lot of us, we're not using these emojis to do that. We're using them to have fun. But the kids are, and drug dealers are using them in that sense. So how do you know? So that's where they're stepping up the game. They're changing it up so that they're able to get stuff out there without, I guess, being recognized.
Now, wait, what's your husband's first name?
Aaron.
Aaron. So Aaron has been doing this for 5 years. You're watching what you're obviously seeing him lose weight and do certain things are happening to him that are causing you, concern. And
Yes.
had you talked to him many times about quitting or anything?
There were plenty of arguments and um, kicking him out, making him stay in his car, like live in his car. I mean, there were plenty of times where that conversation kept coming up and kept coming up. And every time like I said, it's people think like, you should have seen it all. It's like when you really love someone, it's hard to explain. It's like you don't want to see the bad in them. So you just think the good, and you're hoping that because he loves you or that person loves you so much that they are changing, you believe that. And I did put him in a detox program that he wanted to go to, which is very important. You have to want to do it to make it work. And after his detox, they put him on Suboxone. Well, Suboxone really doesn't do like a whole lot if you just set them free on it after 72 hours. They're going to start doing that, which still feels like the same high. And then when they run out of that, then they go back to what they were doing. So sometimes I think it's in the field of where we're missing the step somewhere, um, at least in my experience with him. And then he had a mishap. I know he had like a bad urine one time with the doctor that was taking over his care after he got out of the facility. And they just dismissed him with no meds, no nothing, just was like, have a good day. Well, you can't do that to somebody who's in recovery because now they're going to go through withdrawals and look for something else. Like, so, and I know that was years ago, and I know that the programs and everything is starting to get better with that. But between that time of detox, and we even put him in a treatment program in the upper part of Michigan, where he was there for like 3 months. And this was after his heart failure incident. We were like, you need to get help, you need to get treatment. You know, your body can't withstand
Wait, I want
another.
to go back to that. I want to go back to, so what happened that actual day? Tell us what happened. So he's now this is prior to his heart happening, is when he went to the doctor and they said no more Suboxone. You,
Right,
we got a hot urine. We're not giving you anything. So then he went and he scored stuff on the street again.
correct.
And then is it like a normal afternoon? Like what day of the week was it?
So it's just like your normal day. You get home, you have dinner, you're getting ready
You
to
have
go to bed.
children?
I'm sorry?
You have children?
No, no, we don't.
Okay.
We have a fat old English bulldog right now, but we did have two dogs at the time. So it, like I said, normal evening, normal night, had dinner, went to bed, and I wasn't going to sleep on the couch, but then I thought, I'll just sleep upstairs with him and the dogs and whatever. And that's because I work weird hours then. And so I went upstairs and we were sleeping. And then my dog at the time was having kennel cough. So when she was coughing, it would like wake me up because I'm not a sound sleeper. So I thought it was her. And then I saw her at the end of the bed, which she's never at the end of the bed. She's always sleeping between us. Then I look over and I see my husband halfway off the bed and he's gasping for air. And I completely am like, what is going on? So I grab my phone and like I said, you don't know how you're going to act in this. And I'm surprised at myself. Turn on the light. I'm on the phone with 911. I'm around the corner. I get to his side of the bed and he's completely gasping for air. The lady's trying to tell me to get him on the floor. I'm like, he's 6'8", 250. Not sure how that's going to happen because I'm 5 foot nothing and don't have a lot of upper body strength, but we can try this. And then he lost all color. Color completely flushed out of his face, his lip color gone, everything gone. And then he just completely stopped breathing. Nothing. And then his bodily fluids ejected. So I knew he was dying. I thought he was dead. So I hurried up and pulled his legs and got him down on the floor so he was flat. And then all of a sudden I started to do CPR and then that color all flashed back in. They started taking breaths. And then luckily, at that time, a few minutes later, which seemed like hours, the EMTs were there and they were upstairs. And then at that time, he wasn't really speaking very well, so I didn't even know what happened, what kind of state he was in. But then he did end up even with the Narcan treatment, which is something that we look for to try to help these incidents. He had about 4 rounds of Narcan on the way to the hospital. And then when we did get to the hospital, he did code another 3 times within that first 6 period. Yeah. And the last time he coded, it was over 2 minutes. So I really just didn't think we were going to get him back. And then he came back. And then we were faced with, what are we going to do now? Like, how bad is his body? And his heart was really bad. So 90% of his heart is functioning from this device that he has implanted. So he has a pacemaker ICD that is keeping his heart rhythm at a certain rate, and obviously can shock him if he goes into any other type of arrhythmias. which hasn't happened, it's been 7 years now. Okay. And so he's doing really great. So that's never really happened with his device, never shocked him back into rhythm again. So that's a positive. But when we got him out of the hospital, we put him in the treatment program. He did that for 3 months. He came home. He's, got this device now. So now he's what was he? He just turned 30. And
Just
it's
how old?
30-year-old guy has to try to not be around anything with magnets or anything because of his device. And he has to change his whole well-being because now he has to be very careful because he has this thing in his heart and just all in general. And then when he did go back to work, they got him back to work. He was working cable as he always has, and it was Labor Day. And I remember I just got home and I was cleaning out the fridge and doing that. So this is 3 months later, and I get a knock on the door, and I'm like, I don't know why anybody's at my house. And I open the door and it's his boss. And I'm like, well, okay, what's going on? And he's like, well, we found Aaron in his truck. He was completely passed out. We're not sure how long he has been without oxygen. And we transported him to the hospital. So he had passed out from a relapse. He had passed out in his work truck while he was driving and ended up somehow going off to the curb and popping 2 tires enough to get him just off to the side. And normally I was like, well, why did it take you like 3 hours to find him? Because they have trackers in their vehicles. And, they just thought he was just stuck on a job. I mean, that's common. That's typical. So they didn't realize like he was actually in his vehicle, not breathing. And then when they got him to the hospital, we put him in a coma. That was what we decided with the doctors, because I didn't know where we were at with brain damage. Like I didn't know what we were facing. And then when we brought him out of the coma, we realized he had suffered a severe stroke to the left side. So,
Okay, for those people who are just listening and not watching this on YouTube, I'm just going to tell you my jaw has been wide open this entire time. Isn't that crazy? That's how addictive this stuff is. That literally he was not even 30 years old and his heart stopped. He scared his wife to death. I mean, I can't even imagine the thoughts going through your head that riding in the ambulance, being in the hospital that first time. And I'm sure you were like, he's never going to do this again. There's no way he's going to do this again. I can trust him now. He's got a pacemaker. I mean, he's only 30. Who has a pacemaker at 30? I mean, unless you were born with a birth defect. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that is just crazy. And 3 little months later, 90 days later, he is back at it.
Yeah. And
Here.
and it was just like I said, like came out of the coma until he had a stroke because he wasn't speaking very well and he wasn't able to walk. So there was a lot of physical therapy and occupational therapy and all this stuff that went in to after that. And a lot of people say, they're like, well, you don't have to stay with him. And I'm like, well, I married him, right? Like there's somewhere inside me that says I love him because I'm going to stick here with him. He made a wrong choice. We all make terrible choices. We do. We all are guilty of that. He just made a really bad one. And that to me was not a reason to leave him, especially since he wanted to work through it. And like I said, it took all of that. That's why I wrote this book. I'm trying to put it out there so that we're not getting to this point, because when you may have a lot of family, he had a lot of family, great, but when you're at home by yourself dealing with this in your head, there's a lot of things that go on. And I feel like that was really therapeutic for me to get it all out and then put it out there for everybody else, because it is so mentally challenging for someone by themselves, then thinking, how am I going to pay bills? What am I going to do with these dogs? How do I go to work? How do I take care of him? I mean, you go through all of this and maybe you don't have to, so there's those things I put in there to kind of look and maybe like open your eyes to it. But I also want to let people know that you have to, you can't be blaming. You have to be open-minded. The more you force them to do something, the more you tell them this is the way it's going to be, the more they just, none of it'll work. They really have to do it for themselves. And sometimes in these cases, they don't want to. And then that's sometimes when you have to just, you have to leave. But if they're willing to, and you're willing to keep an open mind and stick with it, sometimes you'll have, like where we're at now, 7 years now. And even though he has a lot of health conditions and stuff like that, we're still together and we're still going strong and we're still healing together. And he is 7 years sober. So, I mean, it is very possible to do that, but you have to be willing to do it too.
So what, for one, you must have a lot of you must have some belief in God or something, because there's no way that you could keep going like this if you didn't have any faith.
And that's very true. I mean, I was raised Catholic. So for me, it was always church, Bible, everything. And I know that there is a God, because he would have not made it 7 times coding. He would have not made it through this last attempt of a 3 hour, I didn't get any oxygen, but I'm doing fine now. There's just no way. There's just no way. That's not even luck anymore. That's true angel sitting next to his side, keeping him here. And even after all of that, all these years, when we're going in through different things and stuff, because you get to a point too, even after you've been through all of that, and your body's the way it is now, like he doesn't have any short-term memory anymore from the stroke. So, I mean, we are literally having similar conversations every evening, to where he just forgets things, um, and his social skills and other skills like that, where he's able to comprehend things. It just doesn't go that well with him. Like, you really have to take your time. And so, for something how we started, where we were all just having fun and it was just great and all this, and then where we are now, it's really good for us. Like, I'm still very in love with him from the first day I met him, because he still has those amazing qualities that he keeps me laughing all the time. But and different things like that, different things that we still do. And then now you've got this where, I'm going to take care of him, and that's okay. I have to look at it on both sides. You really have to just, like I said, keep an open mind. If you love
So
that person, you'll stick with them.
was the drugs was taking, were they laced with fentanyl?
The Basically the stuff when it was starting to get closer to these times where he was having these medical issues, yeah. I mean, he was getting it off the street. I mean, there's no really real way to tell what it was or what it was laced with, but majority of the stuff that's out there now is, or even then, is fentanyl, because it's just easy to lace. And from studies I've seen and stuff I put in my book, fentanyl seems to cause those arrhythmias or cause that immediate stroke, oxygen deprived type of symptoms.
And how angry were you?
I can honestly say I was very angry in the beginning. And I mean, and that's just because it was just total shock, because I'm like, he's been lying to me all this time. And even after all the times I let him come back, and now we're here and that. And it took me a while to get over that part with him. And he knows that. And he knows that's why that I am a certain way now with him, even years later. You're still going to have those what ifs. But with his conditions and stuff, he's disabled now. I mean, he was disabled after all of this. So he's home all the time. But needless to say, it took me a while to be okay with it, to be okay with how it was put on me and how it all reflected. But I still stood back and I'm like, you know what? I do love that person he is. And I know that something, and he was dealing in, oh, this was the other thing. He was dealing with a lot of mental things too. So these drugs were helping him just feel normal, not have to think about things, not have to feel anything. And when that was going on, that's another reason why I think a lot of people do the drugs and stuff and stay on them, because it makes them feel numb. and they don't have to feel. And so that to me stood out. And then when he could feel and he could tell me how he felt, then I kind of just like, okay, let's just give this a shot. Give it a shot. We'll keep working towards our things and we'll see where it goes.
So was it trauma? He was younger.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, he's never been really like completely honest with me, and that's okay. But I do think a lot of that. And then he, at the time, his stepdad had passed away, eh, kind of sudden. And for him, that was like a dad to him. And for him, it was just too unbearable. You know, he was really a mess, and I think that that had something to do with it too.
And was there addiction in the family?
No, not really. I mean, his family, I mean, we're all guilty of everything to do with drinking, but I mean, it's not something where I think that that had any influence per se with him. I think that it was just more of he was able to get medicine, kept getting medicine, and kept feeling good because he didn't have to feel, and then it just kept going from there.
It snowballed.
Hmm. Yeah.
Is his family helpful with you today?
Yeah, when he got finally better, I would say after a year or two, when he was finally stable and his doctors were good, we moved to Florida for a while. And I got him out of the situation because that is a big thing. Because no matter how much you do or not do, everybody knows where you live. Everybody knows you. You know everybody. I mean, there's just no way to get out of it unless you just completely remove yourself from the situation. So they were not as much on board with me with that, but I was like, I need to get him somewhere safe in my mind, which I think is another reason why he's doing so very well now. But um, but they have been behind me majority with things that I've done with his health and things because they see that he's doing well, like he's finally doing well, and we don't have to really worry so much in that aspect, and he's doing better. He's found God again, and he reads his Bible and he does his Bible studies, and he really does a lot of work on himself. And he has literally now come to the point where he's like, I will never do drugs again. I don't even know why I did drugs. And when somebody who's going through recovery, I mean, that is a big thing when they can finally say that. And it's amazing and it's very powerful, especially for them. And so for me, I was like, okay, all right, we're moving in the right direction now. Because it really is about, people saying it to themselves. It's just like anything else. Oh, I'm not going to have coffee anymore, or I'm not going to have a beer anymore, or whatever it is that you're doing all the time. But until you actually say no yourself, that's the power right there.
It's so that you have stood by him. He is so blessed. And when you say he has short-term memory loss, I always think of that Drew Barrymore movie with Adam Sandler, 50
Yes.
First Dates, right? And
Yes.
is that how he is? Is he kind of like, what day is it? What day is it? Kind of thing.
Similar. It's not as bad as, what she went through, but it is similar to the fact of he may forget he left the blender on. He may forget that what day it is, what month it is, and some things like that. Like we got married 6/9/12. So for him, that's easy because he can remember that no matter what, because that goes together. So I think some of the things is like he will remember if we've come up with a way to remember, but if it's not like written or not something he knows, he won't remember. So he won't remember like what if he were to take something and move it somewhere, he won't remember where he moved it the next day. It's things like that. So that's where that memory is. And then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, we did just talk about this, but you can't say that because they don't know you just talked about that. So that's it gets challenging and it takes a lot of patience sometimes with him because I know we've talked about it, right? Or I know, but he doesn't. And there's no way to actually really tell him that. So you just kind of go with the flow. You're just like, oh, okay, all right, okay. That sounds good.
Amberlie, Instinct. I mean, to think that you have sat there and you have endured all of this. I mean, he went out, he got a pacemaker, then he goes and uses again. He has a stroke. He doesn't breathe for 3 hours, has no oxygen. And now he is in this state that it's, and you are still there caregiving him.
Hmm. Every day. And every day sometimes can be a challenge. And most of the time we can go through a couple of days where it's good. And yeah. And then sometimes we'll have episodes where he's crying and he doesn't understand certain things. And, we have to go through those things and all of his meds. I mean, that's the other thing I try to tell people. It's like, do something now because you don't want to do this in your mid 30s, having 15 different medications. I mean, I can't imagine him trying to do this by himself. He couldn't do it by himself. He would need a caregiver. Because that's a lot of medication for one to kind of separate. And that's just between him having the stroke, the heart failure, and such. And
And
he's had, go ahead.
who pays for all those drugs? I know they're really expensive, aren't they?
Some of them, especially the new ones, like for heart medications and stuff that they come out with, the newer drugs, yeah, they're pretty pricey. He got on Medicare after he was term disabled. He couldn't do Medicaid because I make too much money, which I don't know why that makes much sense. So it's almost like we should be divorced, but that's stupid. So I was like, no, we're not doing that. Um, and then he was able to get a prescription plan through Medicare, which has helped. But a lot of the times it doesn't cover everything, and you're not talking about the countless hospital bills, doctor bills, everything that we've had over the years that finally after 2 years, I think about 2 years ago, I finally got everything paid off. I mean, that stuff is ridiculous. It was then, and I know it's even worse now. Insurance doesn't cover everything. So you really have to know that. And even when they do cover things, they don't cover things regarding to this. If there's any word of noting of opiate use or overdosing or something, usually insurances won't pay for anything. They just won't. They're like, that's not a valid condition or whatever. And you have to know what to say and to fight with them, which is also in my book because I had learned how to do that and get myself around all of those things. But it's a battle every day. You really have to be a strong person and, love that person. You really do.
I mean, you obviously, I mean, that is evident by watching you and hearing your stories. I mean, to think that you went and you guys were just kids partying, like drinking, and he gets addicted to oxys and all this stuff, and it literally almost killed him. Like he was at death's door. I mean, literally.
Yes. Yep. And I watched it every single time. And I just remember going to the hospital the second time and thinking, what am I even walking into? And I remember screaming and yelling at that nurse on the phone because I know they're supposed to keep you calm so you can get there. I said, you just have to tell me if he's fucking dead. I mean, let's be honest here. I was like, if he's fine, that just tell me so I've got the mental and I can walk in there and do that. And she was just like, he's still breathing. I'm like, okay, that's all I needed. Thank you. I mean, I understand what they were trying to do for me to get there safer. It's not going to help. I just need to know if I'm walking into the same situation or if I'm walking in to claim somebody at this point. Like, I just wanted to know. And she finally was nice enough to tell me because I just kept yelling. But that's the thing though, it was very traumatic. I still can't even believe it to this day. Because at that time I was only 28. So I never thought then I would be going through that with my husband. I never thought any of that. And then what we've had to endure afterwards. So it kids really need to realize, and not just that, I mean, even parents need to realize what their kids may be doing or not doing or whatever. I mean, because they may just die. I mean, they may just not get this lucky. And like I said, lucky, but they may not have that angel that'll save them in the end. And I mean, it was one of the craziest times. And it's just like, I'm glad where we are now because we are doing very well. And that's great. But not everybody can say that. I mean, that's a lot of cost, and we don't make enough money in this world to pay all this stuff, and then the treatment and the therapy and it just goes on and on and on and on, you know.
What is a typical day like for you?
So my typical day is I get up, I get myself ready, and then I'm usually going to work 8 to 5 or 8 to 8 or whatever, and I'll get all of his meds out. Some of them he has to take before I leave, and I have to give the dog a treat. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but he doesn't let me leave unless I give him something too. So it's just things. So I give him his meds and give him water. Sometimes I need to give him a cough drop or something else that he needs. I check, make sure everything's good for him. Go back out, and then if I need to leave him anything like to remember, I'll write it down or I'll send him a text because then I know that at least he's got it somewhere and he'll see it. And then just make sure everything's off, everything's together, and then I leave. And then I've got cameras in the house because I constantly keep eyes on him. Because if he doesn't answer his phone, then I want to make sure he's okay. And then so that I've got the cameras for that. And then when I get home, it's a whole nother thing. It's getting his shower ready, it's putting his clothes out, getting him a towel, things like that. And then I have to feed the dog and everything because that just for whatever reason and give him his meds. And then I give my husband his meds. And then I make dinner and I get the laundry and I do all of these things. And so by the time I really do sit down, it's probably like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm ready to go to bed because I'm going to start my next day. And plus with school, because I'm doing school as well with working. So I'm trying to finish my RN. So I'm doing that wherever I've got time and things like this to bring awareness. But it is a full scheduled day for me every day.
And what about for him?
For him, he keeps himself busy with projects and things. He'll wake up at a certain point in the middle of the morning and he'll eat and then he'll read his Bible and he does his Bible studies things first. And then he plays like video games and stuff because it helps keep him relaxed and calm because a lot of times that's an issue. And I'd rather keep him calm and relaxed because if not, I'm having to deal with that from my job and I can't help him. So, it's good to keep him nice and relaxed. And then he'll go out in the garage and he'll do some other things and such like that and work on his car or some stuff like that to keep him busy and stuff and keep him, sane and everything. But yeah, I mean, that's his typical day. And then sometimes he'll help me cook, sometimes he won't. Sometimes we have bad days where he's just upset and just angry and doesn't know why. And then some days we have really great days where he's like, oh, I can't wait to cook on the grill. Let's go outside. And every day is a different day. I just have to take it as a new day every day with him.
Can he drive?
Yeah, he can drive short distances. So anywhere within like maybe 20 minutes max is good, okay? He doesn't wear his glasses because his vision on the one side is just not good. So he has glasses he has to wear. Um, but as long as it's a good day, like it's a good weather day, then he can get out and go down the street if he wants to go to the gas station or if he wants to go fishing because there's some fishing spots. He loves to fish. So he does that kind of thing. But normally, if it's any further than that, no, I'm doing all the driving and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, I commend you. And he is so blessed to have you as his angel here on earth because I can't even imagine. You had no idea that this, I mean, think about this, you guys. I mean, your person went out there and started to use drugs, and this is what happened. And you don't think it's ever going to be you. And here you are. This is your life.
Hmm. It's an everyday thing. And like I said, it some days is fantastic. We're having a great time, and then sometimes it'll be just really devastating. So it does take a lot as a person to be able to understand and keep calm and collective and work with it. And that's where I think a lot of people just leave whoever they're with because they just know they can't handle it because it is a lot. It can be. And sometimes they're not even as far as he's gone, and it's just a lot to deal with. And I just think, like I said, you got to be open minded. If you really care and you really love, you can try it. But sometimes they don't want to get help, they won't get help. And then sometimes you just have to go.
Does he participate in meetings or anything?
Yeah, he does through his church. He does go every week with that. He was doing consistent therapy when we were in Florida, and when we got up here, we just haven't found the right therapist yet for him. But his doctors, do let him talk to them for hours on time, or can come in anytime and have an appointment and just to talk if that's what he needs. And that's great. Even our primary care physician will sit and talk with him, and that's great. That means a whole lot to me. And since we're back in Indiana, we're closer to home because we were in South Bend, so it's about 4 hours. So now we're able to go home more so he can be more around friends and family and people that really support him. And that's helped a lot too. And sometimes gives me a little bit of a break too. I'm not going to lie. It's a little bit of a break. Nobody will take him all the time, but working on that. But no, needless to say, it does give us a break, and it's nice to be around family and friends, and just basically talking and having a good time and eating good food and just trying to relax, basically.
So are you 5 now? Are
I'm sorry.
you 35?
I am 38, actually.
38. And this is what your life has been like for the past 7 years.
Hmm. Yes, ma'am. It's crazy. I know. I could have never told you, where people are like, you're 21, you're like, what are you going to do with your life? And this was nothing I had planned, let alone did I think I was ever going to write a book, but that happened as well. But that's just because I'm very passionate about this. I work with my state on the state recovery board as well for Indiana, working with the hubs and different recovery centers and just trying to shed light and try to do what we can, because it's now become like a real passion of mine, because I don't want anybody to ever have to do this. I'm a strong person, apparently, but I know there isn't a lot of us out there. So I would hope, and pray that we kind of, look at this stuff and say, hey, wait a minute, there's something's going on, or my kid's not talking to me. Why are they not talking to me? Or maybe my husband's out all the time. Why is he out all the time? Just things like that, just to bring awareness to it.
Well, where can people buy your book?
They can get it anywhere. I mean, you can Google search my name or the book, and it's mostly Amazon is a great one, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, everywhere online. It's available right now. We're working on getting in Barnes and Noble stores as it is, so that's our next step. But for right now, yes, you can just Google it and you'll find it.
I just have to thank you so much. And you obviously have faith and you have a strong belief in God, because there's no way you could do this just by yourself. I mean, it just seems like so overwhelming, and you're so young and you have so much life ahead of you. And but you're doing it because you love him and you're standing by your man. It's to be commended today.
I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate what people say all the time too. And like I said, it seems easy, but it has not been easy at all. Even when it was good, or even when it is good, still not easy, because you don't know what the next day will come. But it's worth it in my mind. I think, with him, he does let me know how much he's lucky. And he knows that there's nobody else that would be there for him like I am. And that satisfies me enough. Whether he forgets my birthday, whether he forgets our anniversary, whether he forgets anything, at least I know every now and then he says that to me. And that is all that I need from him. So
It's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You guys, this is one of the most passionate stories I've ever heard in my entire life. I think it's amazing. From going from being addicted to drugs to having all the things that have happened to him, and he's still alive and you're still by his side, is just amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. You guys, all the information is going to be in the description. If you want to find Amberlie's book, support her, go on. It will all be, the links will be right there, associated with this podcast today. I thank you so much. I send Aaron I send him good thoughts and blessings. And until you guys, please subscribe to my channel, by the way, if you're here. and you haven't been here, subscribe to my channel, share this with anybody you know, all your friends and family. And just please know that you are not alone. You are not alone. And until next time, everybody, keep getting busy, living sober. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.